Never mind.
I think this is on.
Yeah, you're up and running.
Yeah. I think Jen is the only one on.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Jen, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
We're hanging in there.
All right. Good.
Yeah. Just remember that this is the monthly meeting now, so we've been going for the past 3 months, actually.
Yeah.
I think we're still missing 2 members and we're one short then of a quorum.
Hello,
Hi, Erin.
how you doing?
Hey, Aaron, how
Hi.
you doing?
Okay, how you doing?
Good to see you doing good.
Good to see you. I'm post-COVID, I know, everyone's looking at me.
Did you give it to Molly?
I did not. I know, I'm sure everybody thinks, but no, I don't think I did.
Oh,
I don't think I
man.
saw her, so.
We'll have to wait a few minutes. Oh, it's happening. And Peter. Here, here's Jen. Well, now we have a quorum. Here she is. Quorum.
Unexpected.
Susan Lemon.
It's cold in here.
The air conditioning is working great and
You don't look so good over there.
I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm just.
What's going on over there?
Post-COVID, just making sure everybody feels comfortable, so.
Can you cough in my face so I can go home?
I'm pretty much done with all the, like, I'm done with all the symptoms, I'm just, doing what I'm supposed to do.
Oh, man.
Okay, we expect Peter will be here, but we do have a quorum, so 4, 5, we'll start the meeting. I have no announcements to make. You'll be approval of minutes of August 7th, 2024, with some move to approve those minutes.
So,
Second. Need a second?
No.
Oh, second. And so any changes, any alterations?
Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Well,
You want to put a sweater on? You want-
Well, I didn't have a sweater on all day, I didn't wear one, but
Okay.
they're kind of equalizing this in the new HVAC system, yeah. So that's how it works, but this is pretty bad.
Just about to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Yeah.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of the last meeting? August 7th? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. There does not appear to be public in the room or on the Zoom, so we'll skip that. And move on. We have no old business to cover right now. Does anyone have any old business? So the one thing I did do is send out shows to everybody. I think I did not send them to everybody, but I did send them.
That's the email that I forwarded.
Okay, yeah, this afternoon, because I mentioned I might stop by, so she sent that.
Yeah, I mean, this was really not anything other than the kind of thought piece. And the idea of this was to sort of get a conversation going at this meeting as to where we are and where we're going to go next year. I did have a plan at the end of 23 to have a couple of target areas. So, accessory housing. How does the town, how will the town be able to address the increased interest in affordable housing? Is there a staffing issue? The other thing was the trust funds and the land trust funds.
Yeah.
Those two together. The affordable housing, is decided Congress. The 2 items are so. the question really for now, and it's not something we can decide at this meeting, but I think the open conversation, and Peggy, it's great that you're here because you can help us think about this. You know, what should we be doing in the future? You know, we are unfortunately too short, so we really don't have as good a representation as we
Yeah.
like that. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, so Jane, you mentioned the but I guess we'd like to start this.
Okay.
Just, well, this is the thing we said. I mean, anything for this. I mean, I believe we can finish by the end of the year, the idea of the trust funds and the housing, trust, the land trust and the housing trust, at least the end of the month, with some ideas and recommendations. And I think, Anthony, you are the remaining member of the committee that was looking at staffing issues. People talk a little bit about 3 or 4 months. Have a conversation.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
So I think we're covered.
Yeah.
So the question really is, where do we go from here?
Well, I, and Peter and I did have a meeting with Stacy. Right? And we walked her through a housing trust fund. She initially thought that a special purpose revenue fund might have been the solution. Once she went through the details with us on what a housing trust fund would do, she kind of changed her opinion on special revenue fund. There's a lot that goes into affordable housing, as we all know, with regard to financing and management. And the housing trust fund would just be the first thing that we probably could set up, although we have to talk about the details to sort of get the idea of funding going. And here's Peter.
Hello. I can blame school buses.
Yeah, that's true. So Peter, I was just talking about our meeting that
Yeah.
we had with Stacy on housing trust fund. And we went through some details with her on that, and we were talking about financing. There's affordable housing it requires some management, and you probably already know that. So and Aaron will tell us as well. I mean, there's things that fall to the town with regard to management. And if you're going to have more of it, there's going to be more that falls to the town with regard to that. So anyway, we talked about the housing trust fund, and we talked about it in detail. Stacy said that she'll get back to us at the end of October. I guess there's some administrative financial things that are going on. She needs to address right away. So it's all part of the education process. It seems to be a mechanism that's used throughout the state. There's about 7 or 8 towns that use housing trust funds to collect monies from various sources. And it's not just from tax revenues. It could be from monies from other assets. It could be monies that are donated. It's just basically a financing vehicle to help with affordable housing. The other thing I'm thinking about with regard to financing and affordable housing are, how are you going to collect all the monies from all sources that are available? So there's lots of state and federal grants that are available in various other areas, where there's housing related foundations that are providing funding as well. There's not a full-time employee working on that right now, but maybe that changes in the future. It all kind of goes together. Peter, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I'm sorry I wasn't here at the beginning. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was going to be number 1 on the agenda, but that's fine. It was a good meeting. I mean, but it was basically an information meeting where we transmitted everything that we transmitted to you to her and asked her opinion on how we go about it. And she didn't offer any. She just said, I'm happy to help. I'm happy to be here as the financial manager of the town. I would be involved in administering this particular fund should it be created, and more power to you. I mean, Jane had a really good PowerPoint presentation to show her, but we've seen that, before. And I offered to her that I had drafted, a sample, what do you call it? To send to the Board of Selectmen, a
A
sample
sample draft of.
draft of
yeah.
of create an affordable housing trust fund. And it specified sources of income, how it would be expended, who would be on the board of trustees for that particular fund, et cetera. And, as soon as we have a chance to talk about that and see if we like what's been drafted or not, we can pass it on or send it on.
Just Jane, remind me, what is like the primary source of funding, do we think?
Well, it could be from anywhere. It could be someone
Fees.
deciding to donate money to the town in the interest of affordable housing. Could be monies that come in from various fees, building fees, if we chose to assess new fees.
Inclusionary zoning fees.
Yeah, and then once the pot starts to grow, you have the income off of the investments.
All the sources of income are listed in the draft of the documents that I.
So it's one piece to a very big puzzle. And this is the financial mechanism that the town would use. Additionally, we talked a little bit about the administration of it. And she also noted that it's sort of not really cohesively managed right now with certain things that go on with some of the affordable housing units that are being managed right now. So it's interesting as we go through this process, because one of the things that I had mentioned in an email to you guys was, this time last year, Christine and John Michael Parker sat in front of us and said, hey, there's going to be this 25-member working group that's going to focus on affordable housing assigned by a state legislature. And we haven't heard anything about that. So we're kind of wondering, what is the pressure for affordable housing? Do we,
Actually, I believe that the committee that it's been reformed again, but I think there is a committee that actually is involved. They haven't acted yet, they haven't met yet, but they have reapproved according to CT narrative. That's all I'm getting from. But the legislature is looking at it again, I guess, for the next legislative session.
Because this was like a short session, so they don't do a lot of big policy stuff, so I'm guessing it's more for what's gonna be this next session.
Well, you were probably in that meeting, Peggy, but the impression was that, hey, maybe there's a different mechanism besides 830G and just, allowing developers to come in and leverage that as, their big stick, so to speak. So,
I mean, I think there's a lot of conversation going on about what's going to tackle the problem. I think at the local level, we just have to look at what tools we have in our toolbox, unfortunately, so we're kind of subject to the whims of Hartford. When we talk about pressure, I feel like it's more just there's a community demand. So like, how do we address that community demand? What can we do to alleviate it and focus on those things? And I guess if we look back at it, because I was kind of refreshing myself on this, and I'm happy to give some comments at the end if you want. I know right now you're talking about objectives. I don't want to go ahead of your board members, so I was thinking this through a little bit. I think some of the big takeaways from the plan, a lot of it is zoning driven, right? Because there are just barriers to creating denser housing in Madison because of zoning, right? So the process that Aaron and the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to be going through is looking at all their zoning regulations. Their POCD process was just completed. So I think there needs to be coordination between the objectives of the Affordable Housing Plan and Planning and Zoning, right? And you're kind of a committee that should be aligning with them and perhaps working with them. So maybe it's identifying a liaison from your committee to Planning and Zoning, maybe having a working group with them to talk through and zoning's very complicated, right? And it's very, Aaron's the expert, zoning's, that's their area. But I think we need that advocacy group, right? Out there, making sure that things are addressed, trying to put the best foot forward in terms of the zoning process. So I feel like that is something that's perfect timing, right, for next year, because they're gonna be going through that process. So that's like a great objective is how do we make sure that we're advocating for what the town needs through the, zoning regulation review process? And it might just be minor changes, but it's just, because it's gonna be top of your mind. I mean, but meanwhile, P and Z has got a lot going on, right? They're looking at all kinds of things and trying to make things more efficient, more streamlined and consistent. And so I think that should be an important part of the conversation and how you wanna manage that. The second piece is the town properties that we have up, and I noticed your memo talks about that. Because we have a couple of large pieces of property that are gonna be vacant starting the end of 2025, right? Because the school district next year is going through redistricting, we're on schedule for everything, so Jeffrey and Ryerson will be closed starting next summer. And so we have a facilities committee that's going to be looking at how do we make decisions as part of the Madison portfolio of assets that we have, right? Now we've got these two coming offline. Do we need this building for anything? Is there strategic value for the property because it's aligned with the campus? They're gonna be thinking through these things. You're gonna be the advocacy group saying, town property should go to affordable housing, right? So I think.
Well,
Yeah.
Francine and Jane
So-
have both met with the committee.
Yeah.
The facilities committee.
Maybe I can
Yeah,
jump in here since
Yeah.
you're right on the next thing,
okay,
which is town parcels.
yeah,
So Jane did a fair amount of work, and she was able to identify through her program that she has, we had about 60. And the two of us sat down and went through like 60
Yeah.
town priorities. And then we kind of narrowed that down
So
to
we
about
wrote
30.
in Aaron.
Then we brought Aaron in, and we got down to about, well, first we got to 30, then we got to 15.
Yeah.
And Aaron does 15, and then Jane and I got back together with Aaron last week, and we kind of just came to just a conclusion that maybe we should focus on the properties that are the biggest versus, okay, there's an acre here, there's an acre and a half over here. And so on Saturday, Jane and I went and we drove around and looked at about 5. And what I found after I got this nice list that I typed up for Aaron, 15, there's one we did miss on Fort Bath, we probably should have gone to, but do that. Anyway, and we came away from that with looking at it and going, wow, the schools, those are nicely suited, they're flat, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we don't know anything yet. I mean, it's very preliminary, just kind of running, walking, driving around, taking a look at Ryerson, at Jeffrey, there's all this property on Ridge Road. There's a lot of acreage, but there's it's maybe not the best location, I don't know. But and then of course, there is Borough Park that we saw in the deed actually says two things that the people that needed it to the town for was either park and affordable housing. So, that might be a problem, but there is 60 acres there.
right,
And there's something right on the road. There's a piece of.
yeah, there's that one
There's
on
just
the
a
other side of the
stretch.
road.
Yeah, it's like literally right on the road.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we've done that.
Yeah,
That's kind of where we are as of literally Saturday, just kind of trying to
Yeah.
get an idea of what's there.
great, yeah,
And what makes sense, and obviously, we don't know for sure, because you have to have people that build things. look
well,
at
and
things,
and
What's
that's,
the town
yeah.
open to,
Well, because I think that ultimately this is gonna be a big policy discussion at the board of selectmen level, there's gonna be probably differing points of view, right? Facilities will, facilities might,
Oh, by the way, before I
Yeah.
forget, so, finding out that there was a facilities committee, I decided to just go look at some of their minutes.
Yeah.
And I pulled June, and sure enough, they were talking about town parcels.
Right.
And so I contacted Dave Cadenas, and Jane and I met with Dave
Okay.
and Charmaine last week.
Yeah.
And had and discussed and just listened to what they were doing, and what they're, happening.
Right.
He was explaining how kind of looking at
Yeah.
everything as a whole, like how does the town want to look at everything, just total, how does, reassign, et cetera, et cetera. And so, he did tell me their goal is not to say we should use this for that, it's just maybe assessing it.
Yeah,
So we did agree to keep each other. like,
yeah,
little
well, and I'm
things.
on that committee.
Yes,
So,
I saw that you're on that too.
and so, somehow we're gonna have to come up with a decision-making process, right, for those, because what we don't wanna have happen is something sits for 5 or 10
Yeah.
years, like with indecision, right? And so, so I think that if your committee identifies one or two of those, as, strong candidates and has all the criteria laid about why this is a great candidate, then I think that gets brought up as part of the conversation. And ultimately, the Board of Selectmen may take this to referendum like we did with Island Avenue. We went through a process, so I think we have to we're gonna have the facilities committee is gonna rate it, and they might have different views. They might say, you know what, strategically, we need this for possible universal pre-K, or, town pool, or it's strategically located in Green Hill campus, I don't know about Jeffrey, right? So they're gonna go through that discussion process. And then they're gonna kind of look at it and come up with their thoughts, and then I think it really be at the board level, we'll have one group making recommendations here, another group could be consistent or different. They're not gonna be recommending affordable housing, they're gonna be looking at it more from, does the town need this, right? What should we be doing with this? Is this a strategic value to the town to keep it for its own purposes, for, town government purposes? So, that process will come to a head, and I think our board needs to figure out how we wanna what that decision-making process is gonna look like. But I think from your standpoint, and I was thinking about this earlier, because we went through this process with Island Avenue. One of the good things that came out of is the committee went and actually hired a septic engineer to just do an assessment, like what could you put on this property? Like what's the value of it from a development standpoint? And that was really helpful. It takes funding, so, I was thinking about, well, what if we did allocate funding at your recommendation to do an assessment, because we all kind of look at those and say, oh, those should be affordable housing, right? They make sense, but until you get in and you look at the quality of the soils and the geographic, whatever, and how big the actual parcel is, and then knowing the constraints we have because we don't have the infrastructure, the sewer.
Well, I was going to ask you that,
Yeah.
How do we, Gina and I can drive by and go, oh, that looks nice, but we wouldn't have any
Right.
idea unless we got a developer. And we don't know if we're putting a cart before a horse. Do we come to the Board of Selectmen first and say, are you open to this being evaluated for affordable housing? Or
I think you should be recommending that
then
it should be,
some
it's,
developer to come and say.
I think you should be recommending that it should be evaluated, and then you come to ask for us for funding
Okay,
to do an analysis, so at least when we're doing this, we're doing it with facts, we actually know what the value of the properties are, and like I said, the town may determine we don't wanna sell. Especially Jeffrey if you look at the location, that is a big deal, what I've learned is, we've grown out of space at times, and and then there's also the Lesage piece there, right, the Lesage property along Cops, yeah, and that, we actually did a appraisal for that a couple of years ago, so it's like, how many houses could he put on it and stuff. So I think having all this would help the board make a decision or decide to let the public make a decision, right, on what to do with it. Because to sell it, or we could lease the land. So I think that would be a helpful, I think for you, you're starting this process, but coming up with, working with Aaron and saying, out of what you've seen, these are the best candidates, and these are reasons why, and we think the town should consider this if it's in the strategic plan, if it's into all the things, if there's a need in the community, we want to go to the next step, and I can't remember what it costs when we did Island Avenue, but, to do a septic analysis, there was some analysis we did so they could, and then maybe the town would fund that to explore that.
Yeah, we are recommenders, we're not, and so I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think if we came by and said, we found these properties that we think would work as affordable housing properties, and therefore recommend the town do what they need to do to figure out whether this is a reasonable use or this is another use. I mean, we can't obviously make anybody do it.
No, and I think your focus is you have a mission, and and to make an assessment, what are the best places for affordable housing in town? The board and the public, ultimately the public possibly, because we'd be selling a town asset, would make that final decision. So we want to just make sure you can get as much information supporting your recommendation as possible, right? And, because I noticed some of the other things were about transportation, whereas Ryerson, there's challenges, but there's a way to address that. There's water issues possibly up at Ryerson. So I feel like we need to start exploring that, and I was trying to figure out who do we go to, facilities committee, or do we go to here? But I feel like you're the advocates for it to be housing, right?
Is Board of Ed, have they committed to returning the buildings?
They
to
will
the
be.
board?
They will be, they're going through that process this fall, and so technically it hasn't been voted on, I don't think yet. But they're prepared to do that, and Ryerson was
Okay.
always already slated as a demolition candidate. The Jeffrey, it was questionable about whether or not they wanted to release the building, right? But my understanding is they're going through, I've been pushing, you gotta we can't let this sit around for 3 years, so they're going through that conversation now.
And excuse me, why would they not want to release it? What would be the reason?
Well, if they had a need,
A perceived need, perhaps.
Pardon?
A perceived need, perhaps.
Yeah, it would be a perceived need, for, like I said, universal pre-K, that's always been kicked around is something that, are they gonna mandate universal pre-K? So that, right now we have pre-K, but it's a very limited program based on state requirements for special needs kids, and you match them with,
Peer monitor.
yeah, peer, what do they call it, peer? Whatever, but anyway, like
Yeah,
peers,
like a
yeah,
mentor,
so
yeah.
peers, so it's a very small, limited spot type of program, and that's what it is at TCLC. So, but there's been talk, always, it's been going on for a while. I don't think the state is anywhere close to like mandating that. Other towns have actually have started to offer that to be, for their communities. So there was a discussion like with that school, but the problem is you're still gonna have, and this is where the facilities committee will be pulling all this data together, you're still gonna have a lot of capital improvements you're gonna have to make to that building, right? To use it for something else.
Yeah, that was
So-
the original argument.
Right.
It cost a lot of money.
And that's where they're gonna go through that exercise of identifying if we were to keep it, what investment would have to be made, to keep it used in some capacity, even if it were a non-school use, if there was a municipal use. They're gonna go through this process. They might think, well, because one would say, this was an old school, is there a need for it from a town operation standpoint? But I think all of our studies show that we're not lacking, we have space. And with Academy opening, we're gonna have even a little more relief from that because some of the town buildings are gonna go into Academy. So they're kind of focused on that. And I think you're starting that work about let's be the advocate for a logical use for the property. Because when we did the island one, there wasn't an advocate for affordable housing.
Right.
You had the neighborhood didn't want it, and then you had a school that really wanted to buy the building, and they offered a top dollar price, so it worked out, but there was no one, we had developers pitch affordable housing for that, I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had 2 developers,
Yeah.
but the town, they basically were
Great
getting,
location.
yeah, no, we had 2 one affordable housing and one, it was, I can't remember, it was one affordable housing?
It was definitely one affordable housing, and then I think it was like an assisted, like supportive school or something along.
Or it was foster children,
Something
and like, it
along-
was a
something along
multi-generational, it
those.
was a really interesting concept. There were 2 things, and it might be, those are I don't know if they gotta be on the website, I'll ask Rita, can you ask Rita to find those? The 2, but they pitched a whole, but, they were paying nothing for the property basically, and then, because they were gonna have to pay for all the demolition of the building. And then, we were able to provide them, that was part of that RFP process, the whole septic analysis, and so they got a lot of good information on the parcel, right, to put in a proposal, so, I don't know, foresee where we'll be a year from now in terms of and like I said, I think these are big decisions that we might take to referendum. I think that's something I know Jen, you're on, that's what our board will have to figure out, like the decision process, but I think this is certainly a legitimate, important thing for consideration as a top priority for the town, so it should be on the table. And we should be getting as much information to make the compelling argument, right, that it would be they'd be good candidates, one or
Yeah,
both.
I think
Who was the
where we are.
developer? For,
Sorry, I was gonna say, where we are, basically you said there's 2 things that we can work on. One, we don't really and it's supply, I mean, that's
Right,
gonna be planning and zoning, I mean,
Right.
pretty much, and we do want to work. But we were focused more on, how do we make it easier for a developer to come in and actually do this? And the two things we saw is one, cash, which is the housing fund,
yeah.
and the other one being, lowering the cost of land acquisition, and that would be the transfer of some properties.
Well, and I think the third thing, is this tax abatement policy the town has, and we kind of were learning on the fly. We did it for Wellington. It was the first one we'd ever done. So do we look at that? And that's, I think it'd be good for, that was another thing on my list, like, because what we learned through the Wellington process is, we're giving tax abatements, but we were not able to put any restrictions on who could be in.
As it turned out, yeah.
And as residents, right? And that was because of the funding they went after. So I think as a policy, we want to start thinking this through again, because we gave her, and I'm not saying I'm glad Wellington is going to be a great, addition to the town. But if we start having more of these come forward, even on a smaller scale, do we want to make sure that our priorities are put into that? We're going to be offering tax abatements, right? And then the housing trust fund, and I guess the question for that is, are we giving grants out of the housing transfer? Are we loaning?
Well, we
Developers,
would-
so we would do
You
all,
could,
right,
whatever you
yeah.
want.
All of the above.
Yeah, so it's a lot of policy
Yeah.
discussions, and I think the tax abatement one, we need to clean up and have some maybe objectives for it. And now we have an example of one we did, right, that was challenging, I think, to negotiate. Stacy and I are like, that was a long, but we got through it, and I think we have we can start with that as a model, but then let's figure out how do we make it better?
Mhm.
And how do we make sure that we're getting what we want out of this if we're giving a lot of tax benefits to a development? So,
I think that's one of the other questions we have, we are not, HR department, we're not trying to look at it from a cost standpoint, we were saying, if we are gonna have, we the town are gonna have more affordable housing restrictions, tax abatements being
Right.
granted, how do you monitor and monitor that? And it doesn't seem that, since the town has never had to do it
Yeah.
until now, we don't really have that.
so, and that's where, it's all, there's, we don't have a housing expert. We have a land use expert. We have somebody who does a lot of work with people who are benefiting from these, so you know a lot about funding. I think the town is gonna have to figure out at what point do we, and maybe we outsource that, maybe we just allocate a budget and contract out
There is a
somebody
possibility.
who, manages a lot of this for us, because right now it's been, I know it's been a strain on Aaron and Heather, right? And it's all touching different things too, right? It's complicated, because it's like, it's getting into an area that, there's not one department this falls in, right? I think then we might have to allocate a funding stream moving forward if we feel we're at that level where we're gonna need it. And, if we were to, say, for example, take one of the town properties and do a development, we wouldn't be, this would be, we could lease the land, which is what I've heard now a lot of places do. And then, but that would all be managed by the developer, right? So it's not like the town's gonna run a housing complex, we're not doing anything like that. But we're still gonna have to do this administrative oversight and, like in Wellington, this is our first rental. It's up Concord Meadows, right?
Right.
It's our first mostly low income or, affordable housing. Yeah, so, and usually the rental one would argue we shouldn't have to do a lot of oversight, right? But,
It's
And then we-
typically the management company.
yeah, and then.
It's the owner occupied that is more,
Challenging.
Yeah,
it's
right.
more oversight. And it's the specifically approved through the zoning regulations, affordable housing that requires the annual reporting and the administrator
Well,
documentation.
and that's another question, in your, as you go through this, is what would we want? Would we want, fee, condo, affordable comp, like what we already have? Or would we want rental? What is the preferred path if we were to do this? I think we'd have to think this through if we were gonna take a town property and and, develop it. So I don't know the pros and cons of each. I don't know if it hits a different type of user. What does the community think would be better? So kind of going through that, we have very limited rental in Madison. It's just a reality,
I would say
right?
that
Yeah.
from the presentations we've had, I think more of it is rental, say more affordable housing is rental, overwhelmingly,
Yeah.
what has been presented to us. We've seen some pretty nice looking stuff, we've had slideshows. and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
But I think it seems
And
like
it's
the
easy.
developers prefer
They
the
prefer-
rental.
They do,
They
Yeah.
do.
but
And I
Chris
think it's-
Widmer does not.
I'm sorry, what?
Chris Widmer preferred the owner
Which
occupied.
was he
guy
the
from
small
Guilford.
person?
He's the
Or
guy
he-
from Guilford.
But he just does some small houses.
Yeah.
Or, on a
He
small
did a
scale.
10-unit
Yeah.
affordable ownership and felt he had better buy-in. Well, his program that he went through was sort of an expedited program, which he has funding available for on a smaller scale. But he
He did a
felt
very
there
nice
was
job.
more buy-in from the neighborhood for ownership
Owner.
versus
Yep.
rental.
I think one of the things that has to be done though too is following through on that over the years to make sure that everything is being done properly. And that things, haven't gotten out of control. So I mean, I think we can, from that standpoint, Peggy, I think we can say, here are the kind of issues that we see that need to be addressed, how to address them. We're not probably the right people to, suggest whether it's outsourcing something, doing with the.
Oh, right. But here's what resources.
Here's
are
what we think
needed.
that
Yeah.
has to be done.
Yeah.
And we think also there should be perhaps a way of encouraging people to look at affordable housing in Madison. So in other words, if a developer is interested, how do they, what's their access?
Right.
Is there, and whether that is a person or plan, but the same idea, that there's somebody here that can say, okay, what you're proposing doesn't make any sense for our town, or, that kind of thing, where this may be
Putting some
workable.
sort of, where the town, I think if we could put like, what is the town looking for? And
What are our
I mean,
criteria?
the problem is, it's so limited options, right? I'm sure you're struggling with this, right, as you go through making properties. I'm saying in terms of, we're not gonna be having like, tons of developers cruising through Madison all the time, right? Because they know that it's a high, land cost, low infrastructure, and
Well, and that
lack
there's not
of
an appetite.
availability, right? So there's like three
You're
things
gonna get
stacked
appeals.
against. But I think we can create of what we're looking for, and then if the town moves forward on its own RFP process, that would be all important to put into that, like what we're looking for as a community for. And that was not, when we did the RFP for Island, and it would be good just to read what was done for that, because affordable wasn't, I think it was mentioned in it, but it wasn't a requirement.
Mhm.
So,
Did Dave do that?
well, I think it was the committee, really.
Okay.
There was some really good people on that committee that, and Dave worked with them, yes, and I remember, we went through, yeah.
But if he didn't.
Yeah, I think I did the final. I think I have the final draft, I think, because I remember at the end weighing it, because it was a balancing act of, it was just a big, it was a big community conversation on that school. So you had to be careful, make sure that you made it as even keeled as possible, you weren't, tilting it one way or the other, just hear all the options, come back and bid,
And it was a big success. So
yeah, it was.
The fact that
Yeah.
everybody's fine with it.
We thought we'd get more housing development, to be honest, and no one did,
Wow.
yeah, and that could be a factor of the market at the time, this was in 2020. No, 21.
18, 19.
Well, when we did the RFP though, it was 2021.
Yeah.
It was 2020, and so it was still kind of in the middle of COVID, the housing market was definitely taking off, but everybody knew the school was in there. So there was a lot of other factors, plus the deed restrictions that were on the property, that's the other thing. Gotta remember that, and that's all in the RFP, but there was a right of first refusal, there was all these other deed restrictions, so it was very complicated. And so that might have just dissuaded some people to say, I'm not gonna bother, this is gonna be too complicated to work through, so, whereas, that's a good question, we should probably check the land records with Jeffrey. check the deeds, that's a thing I think the town should do, because.
Which we've done on
I think we
each
did.
of these
Did we
properties.
do that? Okay, because that was not done on Island, and we found out that there was some issues with the deed, so.
Well, that, the challenges on that campus, I think,
Yeah.
in general.
So with the Sage too, like, so that was Jansen, right? Whereas, well, how did we get the Jeffrey property?
It's all part of, I mean, it's all one property now.
Oh, it's still, it's part of the, oh, okay.
It's part of that campus, which we're gonna get into the deep
Okay,
treatment plant, and so the
so we're
ownership.
gonna really need to start doing that.
It wouldn't necessarily, if it was different ownership, be it, you know, it's when it's contiguous land under the same ownership when you're getting into the deep treatment. But the Lesage piece is a possibility to carve off, even if you're looking to, you know, there's ways to kind of make that as potential development opportunities to
Yeah.
offset construction costs for affordable and that, you know.
What, could you tie into the treatment plant, which is wholly underutilized for any, is that too far from the,
I
so
mean,
that's
that would be
something
part
that,
of the process.
yeah, because that would be a huge cost benefit if you could tie into that treatment plant. To whatever's being developed there. I'm assuming right now that Jeffrey has a septic, right?
They have their.
So we're talking about Daniel Hand,
Right.
they made us build this community system just because I guess even though it was completely not needed for that parcel, but there's some standards that DEP has if you have, I can't
Daily
remember.
flow.
Oh, so when it was built,
Yeah.
it was built, at the time it was built, was there the requirement for the treatment center?
Well,
It's based off of the site, the daily effluent flow coming out of the build, whatever that rate is. If you're within a certain amount, it's a local health approval. If you're over that, but over 2, but under 7,500 gallons, it's state. And then if you're over 7,500 gallons
Then
a
you have to
day,
go
then
deep.
you trigger into the
System.
DEP treatment plant, essentially.
yeah, and then you have to, it's a different requirement, it's like a $500,000 investment out to build it. But the reality, when you talk to our staff, is like, you will never need this capacity for the school, especially because of the time of day and the year usage during the year and stuff, so they said it's never, but anyway, so that's a something that could be.
It's there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's-
Yeah, and so maybe you're just adding,
Yeah.
I don't know, but you know, that would be a good benefit to however that property got developed, you know? I'm assuming Jeffrey is on his own septic, but what we need to get, this is a good exercise, because it's making me
Yeah.
realize we gotta get all this information on these parcels, and the
That's
facilities
what we were
committee,
working on,
Yeah.
was gathering some of the land use
yeah,
documentation.
yeah,
You know, Jane pulled up the deeds and
yeah,
general field card information, so I was trying to.
yeah,
Oh,
and then
and that
thinking
other
about
piece
how
to
we
get
would wanna
that.
carve it out if we were going to do that and all that, so, yeah, so it'll be a long process. But it's good to start now,
Yeah.
right, so. But anyway, so those were.
Referring opinions, now get
Yeah.
your opinions, yeah, go from there. But I mean, as terms of recommenders, I think we're getting close to being able to make some of these suggestions for the, hopefully by the end of the year.
I think one thing just would be helpful, if you, when you get to that point, you're ready to make a recommendation, is to have examples of what other towns have done. You know, to say, they did this and they took this old school or this vacant parcel, and I was at a conference recently and I was talking to, it was somebody who was actually the mayor of Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Oh, okay.
And she said they have a terrible problem there because, you know, it's like the ultra rich, like live in Jackson Hole with affordable housing. And she said any town property, #1, affordable housing. It's like not even a conversation. That's how they prioritize. So, so they, there, a lot of places are struggling. A lot of people I talked to at this conference are all kind of dealing with that same issue. So, but I think having those examples, especially in New England or Connecticut, is always really, you know, give people reinforcement that we're not doing something crazy, you know?
Sure.
It's our understanding that I think they're repurposing the school function.
Are they doing housing? Is that the Adams down?
I
Yeah.
don't know which one it is, but we.
I think we're gonna meet with them
They're
next.
coming
next
next
Yeah.
month or
Either,
Yeah.
either the next meeting, meeting after, we're meeting with the folks that are putting that together.
Yeah. Good.
Who's doing it?
Hmm?
Who's
Hope
doing it?
Partnerships and another
Yeah, the
firm.
same, Hope Partnership is,
Oh, it's
is
Hope.
there, yeah. I'm not sure who we have, we've got one or two possibilities that will actually show up to talk about it.
I'm guessing it's the one on Main Street, right? Yeah. Adams.
And
Yeah.
it's like sort of a kitty corner to the town hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's across the street.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the things that Dave and company talked about when we met with facilities people was the cost of carrying some of the properties. And obviously, there's numbers involved to figure out how to optimize, you know, the property selection process. And so the question I have is, should we add the academy to our list? Because of the cost of that, and maybe it turns it into something that's much more viable. But you had mentioned something about staff moving down there, so I wasn't quite sure what
No,
that's.
I mean, Academy was voted on for community center and municipal offices, so
Yeah.
our bonding is tied to that, like, we couldn't, you know, just change that. And we also got $8 million in grants that are tied to what was approved in the referendum. So Academy is tied to the community center and municipal offices purpose.
So there will be municipal offices
Yep.
there. Okay,
Yeah.
That wasn't quite clear. Okay, people have been asking me about that actually.
It was in the referendum, I mean, it was youth and family
Youth and Family
services
Services
and
and
then
Beach
beach and rec.
Okay.
So, because the youth and family services building is, first of all, it's half the space that they need for their
Yeah.
operations. But it's also, that needs a lot of money put into it, so that's another vacant property that actually should be on your list.
Where's that?
It's right next
Across the
to Memorial Town Hall downtown.
It's for the-
Yeah.
the-
Just little.
It's
family-
you'll
have
see
family
something out
services.
front.
It's little, but you could get some apartments in there, I mean, if we ever wanted to do
You
something
could.
like that, yeah.
Is that where your mom works?
Where she did, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the office where she was.
Sure, okay, I know.
So that's a town asset that's gonna be vacant once, youth and family moves into academy. So I think those are always the types of things too, that it can be converted part, that'll be another thing the facilities committee will go through and say, okay, you know, do we want to, is there a you know, town purpose for this? And it does need some, you know,
Yeah.
money put into it, these are all old buildings that.
Yeah.
So, but that should be one that I would put, because you're looking at more parcels and then old
So
school
this one
buildings,
is
but
land.
yeah.
Yes.
And I'm trying to think, we don't really have anything else. And then TCLC, but that's portables, so.
So, is the academy done then? Because I thought the budget went over expectations.
Right now, the budget, well, we're gonna get bids in, so we'll know. So,
Would it, is that gonna use all that space?
yeah, I mean,
And
the
then parking lot
building,
and
there's a
everything?
whole development plan for that building, and it's what was part of the referendum. So if you go back to, there's a thing we put out that was called the explanatory text, and there was also a presentation made, and it'll explain exactly the floor plan, how much is allocated to the different uses. So you could just go back and look at that. So that's the model. We you know, we've gone out, we've raised bonding, we're getting bids back. It's definitely, the budget is tight because we hit the, you know, COVID and then inflation. So we might have to make some tough decisions once we get the bids back.
But there's no way to add housing, like.
Or in terms of like the,
No, it's
the
just the
fields are
ideal
supposed to
situation.
stay behind as well,
Yeah.
so. If you were talking about in terms of the open space that's there, the fields are supposed to remain with the building. From what I understand, correct?
They will.
The
remain
field,
as
oh,
fields.
yeah.
the-
No,
the-
and, you know, I don't know if you were living in Madison at the time when the academy discussion was going on. So there was originally housing across that entire, you know, the ball fields and the school.
Yeah.
Right, and then the town blew up over that, no one wanted that, so then they came back actually, and I think Hope bid on it, so there were 4 bids to turn academy into housing. And that the community didn't want it, so they didn't want housing, so it got then they did the whole community center proposal, and that's what was taken to referendum. So you can see there was 3 or 4 bids, I think, on just the building.
There were 4 bids, yeah.
Well, the big one, but then they came back with the modified just for the building itself.
That's right. A lot of it,
Yeah.
developers backed out of that.
Yeah, so, and I think Hope had bid on it.
Hope they did,
Okay.
yeah, they did.
Yeah, they
So
did,
right now, Peggy, there's no room in the building. It's all been allocated for something.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't know if you could have a building that was like, I mean, I guess you could, but, like turning some of it into apartments and then having some of it I don't know if anybody would want to live in a community center though.
Or an office building.
Yeah, an office building.
On the new 4th floor.
Yeah, that's right.
Memorial Town Hall, on the other hand, could very well be.
I know, well, that's
Basically
another
not used.
thing on the
Another
list that
one.
has to be
Yeah.
thought through. It's all used right now, but it is in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
So, that actually was an auditorium. I don't know if you're familiar that, when you go up to the upper level,
Top level, yeah.
yeah, that used to be, that's a false floor. And that whole thing was a big auditorium.
I've never gone to
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I don't know when, they did it in like the 30s, I thought, though. But, or no, when did they, anyway, so that is another building that we'll have to make some decisions on. But I think right now we have 2 obvious candidates, right? With the
Yeah.
school closures, so.
Yeah, we really haven't focused on any of the buildings, and not that there are, a lot of buildings to focus on.
Yeah,
We've been looking really from the land standpoint, and so essentially we're saying, are there ways to lower the cost to build the housing at a lower cost than it would be if it was done in the marketplace? And there seems to be, and so, but there are a lot of questions still we have to finish, fleshing out what it is we can do.
well, and I think about all these smaller buildings that could be turned into 2 or 3 apartments too, and that's something that would have to be, the town would open if there are incentives to do that, and then it has to go through zoning, right? Zoning has to accommodate your ability to do that.
We were still working on the 24 Wall Street idea.
Yeah.
But the library was supposed to have a board meeting on the 9th, and they didn't get on, it missed the agenda. It was at the bottom of the agenda, they ran out of time, so apparently we're going to try to look at it again. We do have a commitment from an individual to finance the rehabilitation of the building, but not the completely revamping it. We'd have to rebuild the inside of it.
Right. Right,
So, but it would, if the library were to give a long-term lease at a low rent, it's a viable possibility. And it was already zoned for housing.
Yeah.
2 apartments were rented
well,
The second upstairs.
already. Or the upstairs.
Not the first
Not the downstairs.
and that's one, they could qualify as a tax abatement too.
Mhm.
By encouraging that.
Yeah.
So,
But
So
we leave the
there's-
library to think about it. We're still,
right,
they're still advocates for the butterfly garden, so.
Jen left.
yeah, I mean, it's a balancing act, because it costs money, obviously, and that I don't say a burden, but you have something now that you're responsible for, right? And then you have to have it rented and managed and,
Oh, no, absolutely.
yeah, like, so. I can see both sides, but
Yeah.
yeah, but it is a good candidate for something,
Yeah.
on a
They'd
small
have to
scale.
lease it out.
It should be
Don't
used.
we insure it?
Really should not be,
Don't we insure it?
Well, we wouldn't though,
Right.
yeah, this
I mean,
became a
this
rental
is
property, yeah,
separate,
this would be between them and we would be out of that, I think, Right now, it's considered like a municipal building,
Right.
so. But,
it does need painting. Pardon?
Library doesn't pay taxes.
no,
On that property, no.
no, but if,
If they sold it to a.
if it was yeah,
If they sold the whole thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
if they went for market rate housing, but we could then create a tax abatement
Yeah.
for if it were, if it was affordable, so. Or something we could look at.
Is the state giving you any pressure at all under 830G? I mean, everybody talks about 830G and you gotta do this, you gotta, but what's the state gonna do?
830G is a housing
Yeah.
appeals process. It's been on the books since the
Yeah.
early 90s.
Oh, okay.
It's more a tool.
It's an opportunity.
Yeah, it's more of a tool that I think can be used to get a project pushed through the process, right?
A developer
Um,
uses it.
right.
The state doesn't till Madison. it's a developer comes before planning and zoning. And it says, I'm going, they use 830G to bypass the zoning laws.
Like, we could do that, the town could do it, if it were.
Well, at this point, if you had a viable
Yeah.
project, that's the mechanism
Yeah.
to use, is
What
it can
about
be
the
used.
10%?
830G is, your municipalities are subject to Connecticut General Statute, Section 8-30G, if you do not meet the 10% affordable housing minimum, in your municipality. So because we're not at the 10%, we are subject to that, which means folks can come in under that appeals process
And-
in any zone that allows a residential use.
Understood,
And they would not have to comply with the underlying local zone.
sure.
Then the scope of review, it's an administrative review, and the scope of that is really limited to life safety.
But I think though, one of the things that we heard from some of the other towns that I've talked to is you can have a friendly 830G, where the town says, here's what we wanna see, and that gets back to what you were talking about, here's what we want, so maybe it's not us developing them, but do you wanna offer those guidelines, like the town wants affordable housing, but here's how we want it to look.
Right.
Here's the criteria that you want, so that if somebody's gonna come in with 830G application, they could do it, and they call it friendly, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of
Yeah.
cooperating with the town versus just coming in with, something that might be unappealing, not
We
fit
visited
in.
a couple of those, and they're really nice.
Yeah, the friendly.
Friendly
Yeah,
830Gs.
yeah,
Well, the one in Guilford, I think it was what he
Well,
used.
we
830G.
visited one that wasn't, that now is
You ever-
accepted by the
That was not a
neighborhood.
friendly
Yeah.
830G. That was an 830G application in
Plain
the
and simple.
industrial zone, yeah.
For those
For
houses,
100
for those
units?
houses. No, I'm talking about the one that Chris. was talking
No,
about.
that was an affordable housing zoning section that allowed,
He didn't use 830G.
no.
How are we coming on replacements for the absence of two members on our committee? We got any?
I
A lot of
think.
enthusiasm for this.
I think that we will it's just the summer, I think it just slips through, it's tough to be recruiting and stuff, but we'll be working on it.
We
this
were
fall.
thinking of serving cookies and a glass of wine after each one.
Yeah, that will be
Yeah,
good.
that's about it.
And I'm actually gonna be putting out a, looking for volunteers on these key committees thing. So that we might drum up some people, but we've been talking to a few people, I'll be honest, it's just been kind of like busy summer. And, I think this was June you resigned, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, so we're not
Well,
too bad.
there was one application, but then it was
Withdrawn.
withdrawn due to medical reasons, so
Oh,
there
they
was a
do.
little bit of interest.
Oh, we did have one, okay. Yeah, but it is important, and we need to, we have a couple of committees, really important committees we need to get seats filled, so we'll get back on that.
Thank you.
So I don't know, I hope that was helpful,
Oh, very much so.
Very,
very much.
Yeah, good, and, you were able to spend a lot of time getting up to speed, you obviously know a lot already, just in the conversation, you researched a lot of these things, so now it's kind of trying to narrow it down and get to some specifics, actions. I did want to mention too, I'm going to be speaking at a housing forum. I'm giving a presentation, I found out. I thought I was going to be on a panel. I thought I was going to be on a panel, and instead I was told, you're bringing, get us your presentation the day before, and I'm like, what? It's the Mayor's Affordable Housing Forum. And so, anyways, I might just highlight, some of your committee and the work that started, and then I'm gonna talk about the Wellington thing. I wanted to talk to you about that. Just give our experience, going through that process, the tax abatements, the, challenges that we faced. And then talking about kind of things that we're struggling with right now. In towns like ours, that don't have a lot of.
We probably could never get to 10% affordable housing.
Yeah.
We just,
Well, and I find like the problem is, I think what people like the most is this mix where you have a couple of the affordables, but then that doesn't help your number. Right, so if you had 10 market rate and then you have 3 affordable, you're hurting your zero is, I mean, that's what's the problem, it shouldn't be a percentage, it should be focused on number of units added, like, are you progressing, you know? And, you know, so there's a lot of talk trying to make some changes at the state level, but I really think it should be about progress and adding units and this, because you really are, you know, you have, and you could get killed, you could add, like, we'll add 24 units for Wellington, but then if we have the Bradley, they cross the stop, right,
Yeah, I
or
mean,
like they
It's
never
almost
each other
mathematically
up, yeah,
impossible for us to get.
Yeah. so,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's one of the, when we sort of, you know, that's never gonna happen, but can we show progress?
Right.
How can we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this shows, if we can say, we set up a housing trust fund, you know, we've engaged these things, we're looking at possibly doing a town it just shows steps and what we're doing.
When and where is your presentation?
I can't,
Okay.
it's on my calendar, it just says hold.
In the middle of October, right?
Yeah, is that something, do you know anything
I
about
don't
this?
know the exact date, but I remember
Uh,
us.
Let me look up the email
Or
about
let
it.
us know.
Forum on Affordable Housing. CMBA is the Partnership for Strong Communities.
Oh,
Do you know them?
yes.
Should I be worried about going to them?
That's what David was on.
I think
He
that's
ran
when
it.
came
Oh,
from.
yeah, because I met the woman that's on
Yeah.
this, and this woman that I met, she's also on the Mortgage Bankers Association Housing Committee, and so we were having a long discussion, and she
I
said.
think John's involved in that too, John Guskowski.
I think I have, so, the mayor of Hartford is speaking, I'm speaking, the mayor of Kent, or the first selectman of Kent, of Warren, the mayor of Danbury, the mayor of Waterbury, and the mayor of Manchester. So it should be a good, I'll see if this is open, so maybe some of you would want to attend. I don't know what the deal is, if it's a lunch or just a, you know, I'll find out. And then I was just gonna do, like I said, the thing about our experience with Wellington and some of the challenges towns like ours have. You know, to
Yeah, good variety of speakers there too.
yeah,
October 17th.
October 17th. In Hartford,
Aquaturf.
pardon?
Oh,
At the
Aquaturf.
It's in Plainville,
Mhm.
so it's probably gonna be pretty big.
That's not at cost. This is the actual,
No, there's a registration and there's a fee associated with it.
but it's not at the cost conference, is it?
No,
Okay.
no, it's a separate housing
It's a
fund.
different
Cost is
one.
actually, well, first
It's a
week of
different
October
day.
or something.
Yeah.
So. Okay, well, thank you for giving me some time at your
Well,
meeting.
thank you for giving us your time.
Um,
Another quick question.
Yeah.
We're still ad hoc, is that gonna change?
so, and we've had this conversation before. That was kind of, so we as a board decided there's ordinance committees and then there's just boards and commissions. Ordinance committees is a different process and standard, and we're really gonna limit the number of committees that we put into ordinance. So we're gonna keep those folk like planning and zoning, like high, so then we're gonna have committees. And we don't have to call them ad hoc or anything. I think that was like a remnant of our old charter. So we're just gonna have our committees, and then we'll review every couple of years the charges, and they just keep,
So we don't have to call ourselves ad hoc
No.
anymore.
you
Okay,
can drop the name.
we
But what
stop
we
now.
do need to do, and I'm right, is we need to just vote on the actual charge, right? Because you did amend the charge, you put it in the format of all our committees. I just forget where we stand with that.
Well, there was question whether or not you wanted it to be a little broader as a housing committee, as
Yeah,
opposed to just focused on
What's your thought on
deed
that?
restricted affordable housing.
Personally, I think affordable housing is a big enough challenge.
Yeah. So, and you prefer to just keep, because affordable denotes the, you know, now we're getting into deed restricted, and so like the short, so for
Well, I think
example,
it-
the,
Well, I think maybe the charter, in the original material that we did, the original committee, the town committee.
yeah,
Focused a lot on the 10%.
yeah,
I think that personally, and I may not have my committee with me on this one, but I think the idea of affordability can be broader than just simply
Right.
the
right.
10%. deed restricted.
Well, and I think that's what we talked about, and because the reality is, it's almost impossible for us to hit that. But if we could create housing, more housing choice for the town, right, and that came out of the strategic plan.
Good work.
I guess what I look at it differently.
Yeah.
So I have a difference of opinion. When I look at the affordable housing plan that was written, what I have taken, my takeaway from that is when they talk about the affordable housing committee, that is what it seems to me our charge is, to facilitate affordable housing, deed restricted affordable housing. And so those are the responsibilities that we are on the chart, that's where we're
Right.
connected. So that's what I see as our responsibility.
I think that's the way it is now, and that's where if you read this, that's a focus. And maybe we just table the conversation as we go through this, at least let's try to get some of these checked off first, you know?
Mhm.
Keep it focused on this, and then maybe 2 or 3 years from now, we step back and say, okay, now let's have, you know, we could, what's nice about it, if it's not, since it's not an ordinance, you come back to the board and then we can update the charge and make it broader. But I do think you've got enough, as you said, right now, right, just doing kind of this stuff, so, you have enough on your plate for this, and then maybe tackling some of that other stuff, because I also think the zoning piece for housing choice drives a lot of that here, right? And you'll be advocating, you know, for the affordable piece, but, I think that's a conversation zoning's really gonna have to focus on to housing choice. All different types of housing is allowed for more of that in our zoning regulations.
I mean, I guess what I would add to that is
Yeah,
the zoning regulations, if the zoning, if P and Z decides to change, you know, the size of lots or whatever, you don't really need a committee to go find developers to build 2,000 square foot houses
Yeah.
versus 5,000 square foot. But you probably do need a committee to help facilitate deed restricted.
right, yeah,
And
no,
so
it's a very good
That's
point.
why, that's how I come at
Right.
this.
Right, no, it's a very good point. I mean, I think the whole ADU conversation is more the housing option, right? Because it's creating greater opportunities for people. And I'll be honest, I think that is like a more immediate need, because we are restricted about 800 square feet,
Yeah.
right? Our ADU limits, which really, I just know hearing from the community, you know, it's small, right? And so they're trying to accommodate, you know, their parents, one moving from, you know, or kids coming and having a separate, the size of, but that is really, it's creating more housing options out there and potentially affordability. But it does fall through changing zoning regulations, right? So, but I think you do have your own, you got enough to start on this stuff right now. So, so I think with the board, maybe we just, you know, the next month or two, we come with that final charge draft. I remember we had the conversation and I think
Yeah,
we
the
made,
other, I mean, there's language in there that's,
yeah,
we've had it for months.
yeah. I think we just need
It's
to
the
vote
original,
on it
it's
to
the original
approve it.
charge, right? I mean, we can never change it at all.
I think Bruce had asked for
Yeah.
clarification on a couple items
Yeah.
that
Has
then
it,
it had
has it
tweaked.
have been clarified? So
Yeah,
I don't-
I think we tweaked
I mean,
it, it's
you've
now
seen
in
it, and
standard
it-
format for all
months
our
and months ago.
charges. Because that was the other
Just
thing, I think we're
consider-
trying to put everything in the same format. I think we did all that, and then we can just vote on it, because ordinance requires a public hearing. So we don't need to do the public hearing. So we can bring that up at a meeting in October, we'll just vote on it. And maybe maybe what we could do is have it, you know, or maybe we do it like in November, and you can come and give a report, you know, just where you are in your process, and as you finalize your goals for next year, and then we'll just vote on the charge.
Yeah.
And so we can, maybe November, that gives you another meeting in time to refine some of your stuff, and if you're ready for a recommendation on the housing trust or something, it's tie it all together. Thought. So let me know what timing works best for you.
Well, I think sometime the board meets twice a month.
Twice, yeah, the morning meeting is Zoom only and it's at 8 o'clock. So, or you can do the evening meeting. You know, a lot of groups like to come to the evening because it's more convenient, but also more public interest, but it's up to you if you
Okay.
prefer the mornings.
Well, I think if there is, Aaron, a final version of whatever is gonna be presented to the board, so I think, I don't know if I've seen it Have we seen that?
Yes.
It was
We've seen it
Monday,
finally?
yeah, it was.
Pardon?
It was
So
probably
long
like
ago.
May, I know,
That
I
we
think
forgot about
May,
it?
and
Yes,
we're
a long
holding,
exactly.
Okay,
because the other thing is we
I'll
have a
send it
bunch
to
that we have to do in ordinance because of the new charter.
right.
And we just wanted to do one public hearing for all of them versus having everyone have to hold a public hearing. So we kind of like held them back, and then that's when we had the conversation, do we need to make these all ordinance? We don't really need to, we talked to town council. So you're not alone, there are other committees that are just gonna be committees. And they won't be ordinance committees, so, but the name ad hoc will be removed from the title.
We'll stop using it.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, thank you very much.
okay, good,
Appreciate it.
well, thank you, appreciate it, I'm gonna run, because then I'm back here for board of finance and stuff.
Yeah, I have to excuse
Thanks.
myself.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you for coming to hard work.
Okay, so I think we, that
I'll
was
connect.
very, very helpful. Yep,
Okay,
that was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And now we have I think we are consistent with what I keep saying. I think we need to finish up the things that we are working on right now so that we can try to, and perhaps even try to put together a schedule for trying to finish these by the end of the year. Not that it's critical that it be done by 12/31. But we should be at least trying to get it done. And then looking at the focus for next year, clearly, one of the things that we need to do is, as I say in my note here, is to be able to establish a liaison on a permanent basis with the planning and zoning, and that could be in the form of one person or it could be two-person or committee. I think about, who wants to make a commitment to be involved with this. I think Carol Snow is very open to this whole thing. She's a supporter
Oh, yeah.
of affordable housing, so it's not going to be difficult. And she did mention to us her vice chair, I guess it is, this is a person, it's the person who should possibly do for it. Pardon?
Bob Ryder is the vice chair.
It's her vice chair. At least that's what she's suggesting. So why don't I get in touch with Carol and tell her that we're interested, and ask her how she would like the liaison to work. We'll think about how we want the liaison to work. Hopefully that'll mesh. We can start that soon. I mean, one of the things that we said was that we had to wait for the POC to be approved by the board of selectmen. Now that's done. So,
Mark, would you say that again, please? It's not loud
I'm
enough.
not like that, sorry. The Aaron had asked us to wait to engage with the planning and zoning after POCD, which was a lot of their responsibility also, getting approved by the board of selectmen. That's now done, so now it's timing is good to establish that relationship. So what I'm looking for is someone's who want to be a permanent liaison with the planning and zoning. And I will talk to Carol Snow, the chairperson there, to see how she wants to handle it. We can work it out. Understand fairly. Okay. So she is in that.
I guess I would just ask, like, what does that mean, like, it's required?
It would require,
Yeah, that's what Carol should come back to us.
Yeah.
yeah, she's gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
She
Yeah,
wants
What
to
good
also.
question.
do you see that,
And
what,
part of just getting information, where are they and what are they thinking about, so that we have, as a true liaison.
But what's the practical aspect
Yeah,
of it? So, because if someone's gonna volunteer for it, what are they volunteering
yeah,
for?
to do.
Once additional, once a month meeting, twice a month meeting?
What-
What
Yeah.
do we
so
think?
if I
What are
could
we
add
gonna
in-
recommend? Or
Well,
she's gonna ask us.
The committee is going to recommend, not an individual, not the liaison's not going to recommend. But what is needed is that we have no connection with what is being on the agenda for the planning and zoning. So one of the things is to be informed, just like, Jen or Heather, you're just here to be able to understand what's going on and be able to add if you want to. So it's not a responsibility. I don't see it as a responsibility to do anything particularly, other than understanding what it is and communicating back to the planning and zoning, what we are thinking.
So I would say, planning and zoning meets frequently.
Yeah.
And their
And they're-
meetings are very long meetings.
I don't think it's a matter of sitting in the planning and zoning meetings. I mean,
Okay.
as I understand, this would have to be off record. I mean, it's not, you don't want to go through finding out how somebody wants to build their house and get 12 feet off the septic system or something.
So I think that's definitely something for your board to discuss, what you want that to look like, and also to discuss with Carol, because typically liaisons are going to go to these meetings. And it's sort of important to have that connection with them, even if you're not speaking at the meeting, just so they see you there and in the back of their minds, they're thinking affordable housing just by seeing you. Which would be a lot for one person to potentially take on, if that's the direction you're gonna head with it, so.
Sorry, say that again, you're saying that whoever liaison from here should be attending the planning and zoning meetings?
Potentially, typically people would attend the planning and zoning meetings. So maybe what it is talking to them and having a certain section of their meeting once a month or periodically where you're checking in with them and having that connection with them. So it's not every single meeting that you have.
On the
to attend.
agenda, just a part of
Yeah.
the agenda.
Yeah,
Because the idea that we're gonna go to 2 meetings of this a month and 2 planning and
no.
zoning meetings,
Right,
that's,
no.
you know, I don't even
Well,
know
it's
what
nothing
the
to,
point of it.
Frankly, it has nothing to do with the 2 meetings. I mean, the fact is that 90%, 99% of the stuff here has nothing to do with.
That's what I
affordable
mean,
housing, you know?
but Heather's saying that liaisons are.
No, she is suggesting, we're talking about these.
Yeah.
Maybe a suggestion. I think that perhaps a periodic meeting with our committee or with some of the members of the planning and zoning in our
Yeah.
committee makes sense. I think what we were talking about in the conversation we had with Carol in the spring, we did not follow up on the reasons we indicated, is that we should know what they're thinking in terms of affordable housing, and they should know what we're thinking in terms of affordable housing. That is the liaison function. And that's all it is. Now, how that's executed mostly would be on, you know, basically informally meeting with people representing from there to make sure that we know what's going on. I think that's how I see it. I'm not proposing a particular job. I don't have a job description. That's what we have to put together, is a job description. If anyone is interested in doing that, I think about being involved in that process. But the committee should do the job.
My keen ear picked up a real appreciation of a housing trust fund from Peggy. She mentioned it a couple times, suggested a way to do it. I really would like to create a recommendation.
But that's,
You know,
that's, I think
And
you and
we've got one going, and we could,
I think we agree that that's what we want to finish by the end of the year to be able to make recommendations.
all right, that's good.
I mean, nothing
I'm
to do
glad
with
to hear you
that.
say that.
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, the memo I wrote, I mean, one of the, those are 3 things I said we are working on. One of the things, we definitely should try to get those, at least what our recommendations are.
All right.
Couple of months.
All right, so we will agree on a draft of something that we could send to this.
Yeah, I don't think you have to draft a resolution either. I think you have to, I mean, I think what Peggy was saying is tell us what you think.
Well, that's,
You're not drafters of legal documents, so.
all right, I misspoke.
Whereas,
Right.
no, but seriously, I think that we don't need the legal language. We're not lawyers. I think.
Oh, we need
are.
a summary of what we would like to see. We need a summary of what we would appreciate seeing
What
from.
is in the case of the housing trust fund, what is a housing trust fund? And what are the sources of revenue? I think, and you mentioned, what other towns are doing, you've already done some of the research on that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, so adding all that, putting together a package of information for consideration.
we can do that. We certainly do that.
I'm still back on the housing liaison, if they're trying to put together, because I'm
I
sort
mean,
of,
the planning and zoning liaison?
yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe you can articulate the purpose of that. Because I think as a commission, if we get to a point where we're making recommendations, we will be talking directly to planning and zoning. At some point, let's say if there is a project, or if there is a piece of land, I think it would be a natural progression for us to include the input from the planning and zoning in our recommendation or in our whatever presentation we're going to make with regard to anything that come up. So, but yet, when the planning and zoning goes through all of their stuff, which is all of their applications on weekly, I don't know, however often they meet, very little of what they are focused on is applicable to us. It's really what we are going to recommend being applicable to them and also affecting, making sure it fits in their law. So I'm kind of confused as to what the goal is with regard to having somebody attend all our meetings, or even just once a month, or even just once a quarter. I just think it really is only if there is a specific developer or project that we are going to, or piece of land even, because then we can say, hey, you know what? See, in my mind, I would think, okay, if we're gonna recommend that the Jeffrey School is something that's very, applicable for location for what we're trying to accomplish, we would naturally bring in Carol and Bob to say, hey, anything about this area that you guys see? I just think it would be part of our, process, just so it would be our natural part of our progression. So I'm trying to understand what our liaison is going to do outside of that, because I just think that would be something that would be a requirement for us. It would be part of our due diligence process. So I guess I'm confused.
Well, first of all, I think the idea of us attending planning and zoning meetings does not make any sense at all. So let's take that off the table.
Good.
All right. Doesn't make any sense at all.
All right, yeah.
So the liaison, if I am understanding what we were talking about before, was that the thing you made before, having a open communication with people on the planning and zoning, know that we're looking at Jeffrey School.
Okay,
And so they know that this is something we're talking about.
okay,
And why we, and then from their standpoint, they have some information that they are passing back to us informally saying, forget the Jeffrey School, it's gonna be used for its parking lot for the buses,
Right.
that's.
so it is part of our due diligence would be to speak to them once we get down to
When it
sort of whittling
matters.
it down.
Well, not even really down, just on an informal basis, saying, here's kind of the
Okay.
things we're thinking about.
Does that
We are,
Yeah, I mean, I would also suggest it might make sense to have that person monitor just the agenda items or the minutes that are happening at P and Z. So that you know if there's any discussions coming up about affordable
Large.
units, or just so
Or
that
large
you're aware
developments.
of, what
we can do
potential.
that, but also if there were an informal conversation going on a regular basis, you know that they tell you.
Right,
We're about to bring up, we're gonna have a
Right.
meeting on affordable housing only, we're not gonna try to figure it out.
just sort of making that connection, establishing that relationship between the two.
That's all it is.
Okay.
It's a very informal thing, and as far
Yeah.
as the meeting schedule is whatever seems to be comfortable. It's not once a week, once a month, once a year. I mean, it's like, here, this is a good time to talk, let's get together, have a coffee, and let's talk about what's going on. That kind of informality. it seems to me. As opposed to, I did mention Heather as being a liaison, and you are much more involved than I imagine this.
Well, I just wanted to make sure you all were aware, full disclosure of how, what you potentially were volunteering for before you volunteer to go to every meeting, if that's what you were looking at,
Right.
so, yeah.
Is this something, affecting people, this, when you?
Um,
What, you got an issue with that?
No, I was having the same thoughts that
Changes,
Jane was, like,
okay.
what's the reason? Because if you're, part of it is to go to meetings, there's a lot of meetings, and so, yeah.
I never imagined it being a meeting thing.
So, I mean, what makes sense to me is what Jane just said. When we're looking at a project and we realize that we need to communicate with each other, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yes, I think in my mind, I was saying to myself right at the beginning of this discussion, we could just read the minutes and we would know what's going on. And so, in that way, but I understand what you're saying. You want to have a relation, you want people to know each other, or whatever, some sort of informal relationship. I get that.
Oh, I think it's the same informal relationship with the buildings committee. That we ought to know what they're thinking and not wait till we hear about it as a report.
Yeah.
That's all. And it's a, we should be communicating with people that are in the same space that we're in. That's all, on a kind of a regular but informal basis. So if that's understood and everybody, let's see if anybody wants to raise their hand. We don't have to do it right now. Think about it and see how, and if you think there's a better way of doing it, bring it up. Because I mean, I think we were talking about it before and with Peggy, there was just two things that I said in my memo. It's only two things you can do. You can either lower the costs of building affordable housing so that you can have affordable housing being economically viable. Or you can build greater density. We really have no influence in over density issues. We just don't. It's not, it's basically town policy and it's the board. So executed. So,
The only issue with more density as a solution is you're just gonna have a more density of a wealthy population.
it's entirely possible, but I'm just saying, that- I mean, what I'm saying, Francine, Jane, is there's really only two things we can do. There's only,
Yeah.
how can you do, I mean, there's only two things you can do, so.
It's happening right now, right down by Cohen's Bagels. They're gonna build $1 million condos.
Yeah.
So they're gonna build
No,
condos.
1.2 million.
Okay, yes, so, that doesn't solve
Living
any,
over the grocery store, I mean, that's the other part, there's retail on the
it
first.
solves no problems.
Above Cohen's,
Well, no, next to it,
next to Cohen's?
Yeah, there's been
That's how
sign
much
up.
they're gonna go?
yeah.
It's the same, I mean, the same developer.
Same, yeah.
And they, it's basically also marketplace.
Yeah.
They call that Madison Marketplace 2.
Wow.
And so it's basically, it's gonna look, I think, pretty much the same way as the place that's already there. It's just gonna be-
What was the Lesage piece? I'm sorry. I didn't write
There's
that. I-
Small, there's a relatively
Oh,
small
okay.
piece of property up by Gower, which was donated to
Is
the
that
town.
Is that the
across-
thing with the red house?
Yes,
Well, that's.
Okay.
Red
Oh, we
House.
saw it.
There's a
We saw
barn,
it.
It's a barn and.
It looks like a
and-
house,
yeah.
it's right on the road.
it has a plaque on it, a historical plaque on it.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay,
And it's been unused forever,
yes.
and the town is now taking, they actually, looks like they're gonna repaint it, which is fine, and they're doing a good job on repainting it finally. But we have,
One of the points of that was Daniel Hand has the ability to have like sort of a mini sewer system up
Yeah.
there. And that if we do something over in that area, most likely could hook into
Could
that.
hook into it.
Yeah, which I thought was an
Pre-existing.
interesting thing that we need to
I didn't
know.
know that, and it's
That's
overbuilt.
pretty cool.
It's not even
Yeah.
there, but it's overbuilt.
And the Ryerson was the one, which, is Ryerson the one that was,
Robertson was up by
On the
the
hill.
Legend Hill.
oh, that was behind.
So we're talking about
Jeffries,
Jeffries,
the other
his
one.
hand is behind Jeffries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, I was
Yeah,
like, what
yeah,
are
we
those
got
tennis courts?
Yeah.
Those over there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's Daniel Hand's
It's
court.
actually, if you look at it from an aerial shot, it's all in one unit there.
Yeah,
That's what it
yeah.
is. Okay, so that's the liaison issue. So anything else that we were thinking about for next year? How should we, what should be the agenda for next year?
So the last thing is the discussion the three of us had about public meetings.
Well, we want to know, just let's,
Oh,
yes, let's do
okay.
that, but
Okay.
let's,
Oh,
It's-
next year?
I'm just thinking, we are scheduling every 2 weeks to have a meeting.
Mhm.
And number one, I bring it up again as we approach the end of the year, we had a discussion about it at the end of 23, and we decided that twice a month is what we needed to have. Two of the advocates for that no longer on the committee. But, so the question is, should we, do we have enough work to be able to have a meeting every 2 weeks? And what exactly are we going to focus on? If the financial aspect of this, that we're working on right now, is resolved, and we have made our recommendations, let's say we do that. We have our liaison with planning and zoning, but we all agree that we're not planning and zoning people, so we're not going to direct effect on that. What are the issues that we should be focusing on for the next?
Well, we still need
Six or
to,
12
we
months.
need to tie up loose ends. So with the housing trust, Peter and I need to hear back from Stacy at the end of October.
Right.
So we need to, so nothing to report till the end of October on
She
that.
didn't owe us anything, did she?
She's gonna come back to us with her thoughts on it, yeah, because she
Oh,
wanted
just with
to,
her thoughts on
she
it.
wanted to do some research on it
I
and,
thought she told us pretty well what she thought, but
well, she said officially she'll come back to us end of October.
And the
with
same with area on
feedback.
the land.
And with the land, we need to look up some of the, some more of the deeds.
Yeah, I don't think Aaron is coming back.
let's go look at those.
So
I'd like to.
I think that, that we should get together and look at that.
You want us to finalize the list and then you wanna go look at them?
I would like to, I mean, I'm interested.
Okay, well, we can do that, that's fine.
We should get together again
Yeah.
and put this,
Francine and I,
put our thoughts about, and go over this list that I had typed up that we didn't actually take.
so,
And then I would think by the end of the year, perhaps, we'd be ready to write something up, Peggy says.
yes,
Yeah.
I think we should have like a small summary
Yeah.
of our recommendations
Yeah.
for each section. So what are the other sections?
I don't think, what I'm surprised at how few things there are actually to,
Well, it's, I mean,
look
there's,
at. I mean, land, it looks like you're really looking at 6 or 8 things, or maybe even less than that.
Yeah.
I think one thing is possible is to talk about the buildings. I mean, is there something we should look at, beyond just the raw land places in the school? but how
well,
about
here's the
how about
thing,
Memorial
we
Town
would,
Hall?
I don't know how we would know what buildings the town has that they're not using. Like, how would I wouldn't know that's it.
I don't think any are vacant. I think they're all being used.
Well, she told
Well,
us
she
that-
just told us that something's freeing up, like, we wouldn't have that inside information, like that this space is gonna free up. But that's like forever from now. I mean, when Academy is finished, is that what it was? Like, okay, I mean, so it's to, like,
Cynic. All right.
come on.
Or maybe it's a
mean,
cynic.
I don't even know that it's worth talking about. So like 100 years from now, maybe that building will be available to
Well,
talk
she
about.
made it sound, when I asked that question, that response seemed to be like it's gonna start happening next year.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
heard that.
Just going back to, for a vote.
I thought
on
that the budget
additional
was
expense, but it
so
seems like they
blown
got the
out.
money for the
That's what
additional
I thought.
expense.
They're currently in the process of getting bids, from what I understand, and so they're putting together costs. And then moving forward with that, from what I understand.
There's
But I thought it was already 2 million over.
Yeah, I thought it was so, that's the rumor is that it's so much, so far.
I have not been attending the meeting, so I don't know.
There has been reported in the press that it's $2.3 million. But Debbie said they don't really have any solid bids, so
Fine.
it could be
Okay.
$4 million.
Yeah.
Maybe, no. And I believe you do have to go back. Because if you're gonna borrow money, you have to go back.
You have to
the
ask the
town.
public, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
All right, so let's just go
Let's-
through everything.
Yeah.
There's the housing trust summary,
And
there's
it's
the land parcel summary. What else were the other topics?
Well,
We
the other
already
one-
decided on ADUs.
Anthony was working on the idea of looking at what are the requirements how should Madison deal with the fact that we want and there will be more affordable housing, is there a function within the town government, or whether there's, like you said, hire somebody to do this work, but there's gotta be work to be done. In the Wellington, for example, they've done everything right, okay, and they took all their people, they've taken all the people that are gonna be there. But who's gonna watch it for the next 4 or 5 years? Who's gonna make sure that they're still doing the things they're supposed to do, making sure that the people that are living there are qualified? I mean, that's a responsibility of the town.
This the Demarco management company that's doing that.
They are the management company, but it's like the same thing with Concord Meadows. There's no auditing process for Concord Meadows.
Yeah.
If the management company says, we've squared away, we've done everything fine.
So Jamie,
That goes
somebody
back
came
to
to
my
the,
email
you got it.
that I sent to you guys
Yeah.
with regard to
Yep.
the zoning
Yeah.
law that says, hey, there's specifics with regard to affordable housing. We want it to go to firemen and
Yeah.
whatever else I sent to you.
Town employees,
So
yeah.
that's a very good point, Anthony. That's a big job to say, okay, what
It
does
is.
the town want to make affordable, available to whom, and what are the criteria?
So
That's a
and
big job.
because we had made reference to that tonight with relation to the tax abatement program, the town policy on the tax abatement program. So that might be a good focus in the future.
Yeah.
To pull what the tax incentives were for the Wellington, review what they put together. And to see if there's any recommendations from this board of additions to it or exclusions or, whatnot, to review what they had.
Not to get to a big discussion about this point, but when I hear that sort of thing, like when I hear the concept floated of, okay, we'll say that we're gonna build this affordable housing, but the priority is to the firemen or this and that. Not that I don't think that that's a nice thought, but I guess what I don't know how it's monitored is, so you give somebody a priority for an apartment because they're a teacher in Madison schools, and maybe next year they quit that job and now they're a teacher in, Middletown. Do they have to leave their apartment, and who's monitoring that? So that's why for me, doing that seems very problematic. I understand the theory, and all that, but like,
That's very specific, but then you can say, well, maybe just for teachers or.
I mean, but any job,
Yeah.
any, if you decide that you're going to make a criteria that a person can live in this building because they work in Madison. What happens when they no longer work in Madison? Do they lose, and who's monitoring that?
Well,
Why we need a
that's
housing
a
department.
very good point, and that's what we would need to find out how other towns are doing that and how that is.
I think that's a pretty good task for us to take on, actually, to ask
And
to
then-
those questions.
You can add to that, what about disabled people? Where's our housing for disabled? I don't think we have it.
Or the same thing for seniors.
Yeah, but on the other,
You're
but
right,
that's
you're right, you're
different.
right, you're right.
Once you're 65, you're 65.
Right.
Once you're disabled, likely you're disabled. If you have a job, people leave jobs all the time. And so that seems to me very problematic in terms of assuring that that
Yep.
apartment stays with that
Okay.
job. So I'm not, I'm just saying, I see.
But I
it.
think
want a
this
house,
is-
that's the problem.
I don't like it.
How do you
This
enforce that?
conversation illustrates the point of the need to sort of dive
We have
deeper
to look at, that's
into.
exactly right, I think we have to look at it for that reason, and also,
And even say like,
remember this, if you have a affordable housing based on deed restricted, and somebody all of a sudden makes more money, they can't stay there.
Yeah, but if it's a rental, but that's why they
No,
have.
so they can't stay there, they gotta.
Yes, they have to, oh, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
they
it's the
have
same
to.
thing, it's exactly the same
Yes.
thing.
So that's-
But monitoring somebody changing a job is different than, yet every year, I don't know what the monitoring is for for the people that do it, deed restricted income. There's a,
The management company's
Yeah.
responsibility to check every year, people that are renting are qualified,
correct.
continue to be qualified.
Yeah.
And so that is a function that you
But a
have.
question, so you, like you mentioned, DeMarco management, that, they sound really good. But is the town, they're keeping statistics and they're doing what they do. Is the town of Madison per se responsible? If somebody came to the town, state, whoever, and said, does the town of Madison have to produce statistics?
No, and the
Documentation.
town, actually,
No?
no,
I don't-
they don't, and there's no one responsible, other than perhaps Aaron by default, but there's no one responsible in the town to monitor that. For example, the individual houses, they tend, trying to remember, there's two or three different places where there's like two or three
yeah, up on
houses.
Stephanie Court, up north a
Yeah.
little bit.
Where it's mostly market rate.
Down
on,
on Boston West Road, that little.
So
And-
currently, the
and notice
owner
that-
occupied units are required to provide a report annually to Aaron. It's just the owner occupied deed
Owner
restricted
occupied.
units.
Oh,
And they
well,
can only sell those, they are restricted on how much money they can buy.
Yes.
So there are some guardrails.
And that's what I think it probably is worthwhile investigating, and just looking at what the pluses and minuses or whatever you do. I mean, we have talked before about the idea of teachers and firemen and policemen having priority on properties that are affordable housing that the town has given, that has an influence on. But as Peggy said, the thing with Wellington is that we got in later in the day, we gave them money through tax abatement, but they had already got financing that said we can't do that. And there's, depending on what I don't know whether it's state or federal money, or whatever it was, they said, no, you have to be able to let everybody in the entire state of Connecticut, bid on that property. And so I think there's an issue in terms of public relations dealing with it in terms of, who's moving into the neighborhood kind of issue that comes up. when we do that.
Well, for next year, I think you've raised all these good issues, and I think part of us would be things that are not managed well in terms of affordable housing, that possibly a housing manager or a housing department for the town
It
could be responsible
could be the
for.
way to do it.
That's a good list to
Yeah,
prepare.
and there may be companies that are out there that can actually be hired, you don't have to hire a person, you can hire a company.
Yeah.
They can-
Yeah, she said outsource.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And there's a couple of us, but I think it's worth looking into. I think that's kind of yours, Anthony.
we could
Yours
research that
working
and
on
make decent recommendations.
Pardon?
Yeah, we could make decent recommendations in that
Yeah.
regard, if we did a little research into who's doing what with what in that regard. And I'm very aware of all the housing trust funds that are currently in the state, even on, a conversational basis with the managers of those. I could find out a lot of that stuff, just with the,
Well,
because everybody wants to talk.
Particularly in the trust funds, we need to be able to say to the Board of Selectmen that, in fact, this is how you do it. Who manages, who watches the money? What is the function within each of these towns, particularly the smaller
Well,
ones?
our draft of the ordinance included that, who was the board of trustees for the trust fund. But
that's board trustees is one way of doing it. It could be just the finance director.
it could be too, but we haven't even put anything on the table to
Yeah.
debate yet.
So, I have a question. Heather, is there some way we can get statistics on, from social services and the senior center about, income levels, and any percentages on people with disabilities, because I don't know how Anthony's gonna put together this criteria unless we actually know what we're currently situated with. Yeah, like, how do we know how many people are seniors below a certain income level? How do we know how many disabled people there are
So
who may or may not even be functioning as, you know, workers in the
The
town, but
census might be a good resource to pull. There's a
that's
lot
for
of data.
2020.
There's a lot of data that you could refer to. Um,
And then are there any vendors that do local surveys for us? That maybe some of this stuff could be put into the next survey, town survey that they do. I don't know. It's just like there has to be something sort of backing the recommendation. You know, we have to be smart about, I mean, I don't even know what percentage of our populations are, you know, people over a certain age or under a certain income or disabled or, you know, and then also you talk about teachers, you know, whether there's, you know, how many people are in the education field. I mean, I don't even know how you could get all those stats. That's why I'm kind of.
I mean, I think if you put together a list of the things that you would like to see, we could try to come up with some resources for that. I don't.
Thanks, Jane, because I didn't know where to start.
Yeah, I don't think that, social services and the senior center can give you numbers about actual clients,
Yeah,
but can't necessarily give you numbers specific to the town as a whole, because we may not necessarily see everyone in the town as a whole, right?
Yeah.
So I think a better resource really is to start with the census first
Census data.
and see what information you can pull from the census. And then we can sort of dive a little bit deeper. I think the ALICE study, the asset limited income constrained, that's I don't know if it was the Partnership for Stronger Communities. I'm not sure what organization is the one that puts that together, but the ALICE study would be another direction. They would have a lot of resources.
ALICE.
ALICE.
It's mentioned in the plan.
Yes, so I think that's another, I think they update that every year or every other year. That would be a good direction to get some data and some source information also. Because I want to make sure you have complete information and it's not something.
Yeah,
But if you're looking for numbers in terms of what we see, if you're looking for numbers in terms of seniors who own their homes and apply for tax relief, I could give you numbers for that. And you know, related to that, I can break it down by income category, so I could give you, you know, 8 households at this income level. We definitely could break that down for you. We could give you numbers in terms of folks that qualify for the rent rebate program. There's a lot of things that we could put together. So I think if you hone in on the information you're looking for, then we could sit down and figure out what the appropriate source for that information.
okay,
If that makes sense.
it does, thanks, Heather.
We make that part of the agenda for the next meeting. So,
Okay,
Even if it's just your list. Well,
Yeah.
we don't need-
Are you, I don't know this, is both your senior center and family and youth, you must be a resident of Madison in order to, must be, that you have to call.
Senior center as a whole, anyone can come and join as long as they're a senior, any community. But to seek out social service help, you need to be a Madison resident.
Okay, so you know, somebody from Guilford could join the senior center though.
Absolutely, more than welcome to come. But if you're looking for help with energy assistance, help with tax,
Yeah.
though, any sort of financial programs, health insurance, you would need to be a town resident.
another source might be the Vista Life to get any stats on disabled people.
Yeah, I mean, I threw, look at the population also, Concord Meadows, it must be handicapped and or 65 years old, so that's a big community of elderly people that actually have subsidized housing already. elsewhere.
Which community is that?
The Concord Meadows,
Oh, yeah.
On Woodland?
churches.
Yeah.
Off Woodland Road, yeah. Or on- Okay, I think we've been enough to talk about for the next meeting anyway. So we're gonna move ahead on the issues that we're dealing with and try to finish them by the end of the year. This obviously, Anthony, will take a lot longer than perhaps the end of the year, so we have to do some more. Public meetings, Nancy, you were the designated player there. Do you want to
Oh,
start
sure.
this?
So, for Peter and James
Yeah, for Peter, James, yes.
and Heather. So Anthony and Mark and I got together and talked about the concept of public meetings. And I think in the end, what we concluded is that we thought we should just table them at this point because, at least for now, because we don't really we couldn't really think of something really that we would be selling. You know, like what are we presenting at this point?
It's just
So-
information.
Yeah, so, but, you know, what information would we be?
Yeah.
So we decided at this point, our energies are better spent doing all the stuff we've been talking about this last.
Sure, yeah.
So if that,
Agreed.
how do you guys feel about that? Are you okay with
You know, Ben Fink did something a couple weeks ago on public meetings. He talked a lot about the stuff that you talk about, how you talk about it. He was really good on the whole thing.
He is good.
He is, and he's willing to meet with us anytime we want to,
Oh, yeah.
you know. But,
I think the thing when we were talking about it is that we saw, first meeting we had a lot of people there and online as well as in person. And that was, I think, very successful. Ben and his father did a good job telling us a lot of the stuff that was going on. So there's a lot of information in that meeting. But the subsequent meetings we tried to have, the people kept dropping off. And then finally, the Zoom one we did, thinking that we could help people in the early evenings, it was 4 people that we had showed it. So, but the other thing I was thinking about is there a point to meet with like the firemen or the teachers or the, you know, discrete groups in the town and talk about these things, even though many of them are not residents of the town, understand their needs. I mean, the thing has come up a number of times that we have trouble, the fire department has trouble getting volunteers because people in their mid years are not here in town, they can't afford to live in the town.
Yeah, I think that goes under the umbrella of what Anthony's working on, you know, what's their input with regard to need from that standpoint. Housing need, you know, so whether it's firemen or.
Yeah, but we don't actually have a program to do that anymore. Actually, Bennett was pushing that before. Bennett was.
Have to sit down and have, yeah, but you sit down and have these meetings and then it goes off on a tangent and people.
It can, right?
Yeah.
So the feeling is we just sit tight for the time being. And just continue to do our job and not worry too much about how much we communicate. Well, then I will then bring up the newsletter and your website again, and whether or not we should be doing more with that. Should we outreach, since that's essentially free. Plus,
well, let's brainstorm that next time. I mean, something like that. Brainstorming works well in that regard.
I mean, I have thought about that. I mean, I don't know what else to put on there.
Yeah.
Again, it's the same thing as a public meeting, yeah, like what,
They have the minutes.
well, I just mean, what other information, what other questions, answers are there at this point? In terms of like, can you,
I mean, I'll throw out a couple of ideas. Peter mentioned before about making a tour around town. Or around the area, looking at places, a story about communities in our area and pictures of the people, the housing that they have. Just saying, you know, there's an idea of affordable housing. Here's one in Wallingford. Here's one in, you know, here's the school being converted and that kind of thing.
well, that was the idea I had for the public meeting, was to say affordable housing in the shoreline. That was the only thing I could come up with, that, you know, like, here's what some other communities.
Well, that's a good idea, though.
But-
That's really a good
You know,
idea.
The information is good, just the format is whether or not that's a public meeting.
Yeah, so,
Okay,
yeah,
I mean, it's going on 6 o'clock, so let's adjourn that. But I will bring it up again and see if we can come to any conclusions. Anything else? Anybody else?
Good.
Good, okay, the meeting
Well,
is
stuff
adjourned
is moving.
at 5:51.
Okay.
Jen, if you're still there, I'm gonna cut you off.
Sounds good. Good meeting, guys.
Okay, thanks.